I'd like to direct this question to Messrs. Lennon and McCartney. In a recent article, Time magazine put down pop music, and they referred to Day Tripper as being about a prostitute, and Norwegian Wood as being about a lesbian. Now, I just wanted to know what your intent was when you wrote it, and what your feeling is about the Time magazine criticism of the music that is being written today.
We were just trying to write songs about prostitutes and lesbians, that's all.
Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Crastinators podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Digibro. Whoa! And I've got with me Mr. I just released chapter 2 of my comic, The Vapors, and you can go read it and subscribe to my Patreon, even though I fucked up the intro and forgot to record last time we did this podcast. Ben Saint!
Yes, it is I, Ben Saint.
You have to say that all every time.
And I want you, my friend listening to this podcast, to go to saintcomics.com and read my stupid new chapter. It's
is it up
now.
already? You put it there?
It is there right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Saintcomics.com. It'll bring you right to the beginning of chapter 2. Read it. Give me
Did
money
you put
on
a
Patreon.
chapter select? Did you put a chapter select?
Patreon.
All right, enough
Whatever, who
memeing.
cares?
Yes, I put a chapter select.
Cool.
We also have with us the best guy ever, Nate Best Man.
Hello, I'm Guy. I'm the best guy ever. Go to YouTube, watch Best Guy Ever. I've got a new video. It's finally almost done. It'll
Finally
be here
almost
before
done.
You know it. Okay, let's move on.
No, it won't. Next up, we have
might.
the Devoo.
Hi, I have produced the visuals for the Asterisk Wars Sucks series. That is completely random. I have no idea what context you have, listener.
Yeah,
But you can give him context. There
yeah.
you
Go watch your channel. Go watch the Devoo's channel. He makes good videos
And he's making a new video soon.
right now. Yeah,
Right
probably
now.
by the time this podcast comes out. And last but not least, we have the Hypocrite.
I'm the hippopotamus, the cripplophanophagus, the sobadabe. There we go. I did it. I did it again, but it was worse. Fuck you, Ben.
Yeah, that other one was great.
All right,
For the
today
record, we only lost 6 minutes of recording. We didn't even get to the point yet.
Let's just get to it.
we are here today to talk about a topic I came up with and nobody else understands, so I have to explain it. It's authorial intent, and basically
I understand it.
what it means, what it does, how we should interpret it. To explain what authorial
Authorial
intent is.
intent? What's that mean, Digi?
Authorial intent.
Oh.
It basically means artist intent. And it's sort of like, how I would explain it is, if I was writing a book, and I thought that I was writing it to have a very specific meaning, then that meaning is my authorial intent. You know, whatever I intended for you to get out of the book, that's authorial intent. Now, if you read it, and you get something else out of it, then that is, then not authorial intent. Now, in recent years, well, not in recent years, this is a very old idea, probably 60, 70 years old, but recently in the internet, in internet criticism, and, I guess I'd say not unprofessional, but like, normal people writing reviews and shit.
Amateurs.
Amateur, that's the word I was looking for. Though it's not all technically amateur. But anyway, on the internet, the idea of death of the author has really picked up over the last few years. It's become a very popular method of critique, right? The idea of the death of the author, which I believe was proposed by Descartes, someone like that?
No. That
sounds right. Wait,
no,
was
Derrida,
it,
Jacques Derrida. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Derrida,
Sounds
the guy
about
who's
right.
impossible to read, because none of his shit makes any sense. But, he proposed the idea of the death of the author, and the idea was that authorial intent doesn't necessarily matter. Like, whatever you interpret out of the work is its own work in your head, in a way. Like, if I read a book and I construct a meaning of it in my mind, then that meaning is not necessarily less valid to talk about and criticize than the actual author's intent. Now, I like Death of the Author conceptually because I think it can lead to great stuff, writing about your own experience with a work can be cool. But I also think we have a danger of people not giving a fuck about authorial intent anymore and thinking that authors are fucking idiots. I think that's the world we live in now.
It is.
I guess.
I don't know. I
It
I
always
kind
seems
of
like that's
the...
part of the picture. If you're looking to get into something, you should at least find out what they were going for, and then you can make your conclusions from there. And if you don't know, then I guess you don't know.
I kind of like the idea of being able to just make your own, like, conclusions, regardless. Like, if you just don't care what the author thinks, I think
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's space for that to exist.
like if you get something out of a work, it doesn't really matter if the author meant for it to be there. You know, for
Right.
you, it was there. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. But here's where this podcast is coming from. All right. Specifically, this is to address a comment that I get a lot on my videos, and I'm sure you guys have all gotten to, which is that you are thinking more deeply about the show than the guy who made it.
Yeah, I've
yeah,
heard people
yeah.
say things like that.
I get this all the time. I'll get like on my Ava videos or something, you know, I'll point out like the way that a shot is constructed, and they'll be like, "There's no way they put that much thought into it," you know.
Well, I agree that kind of flippancy about it is wrong-headed, but I don't think that, like, I think in a sort of roundabout way, I agree, because when you take a work and you analyze, like, oh, this shot was composed this way to emphasize such and such, and, you know, the color composition here represents this, it isn't like that all these detailed notes and conclusions you draw, it's not like they were all mapped out ahead of time and deliberately put there by the author, but that also doesn't mean that those things weren't the author's.
That
You
is
know,
debatable.
in the case of
Okay,
Ava,
so no, some authors do that, but sometimes a way a shot is framed, an artist can just kind of subconsciously arrange things in a way that feels right to them, but that accomplishes a number of goals.
I think that a lot,
you know, just kind of come out of it.
in a lot of cases, including Digibro's analysis of the Ava shot composition, the collective thought that was put into that shot by all the people involved in production and writing obviously outstrips any individual analyst. However, obviously, an analyst or reviewer or critic or whatever has the advantage of being able to look at the completed work after it's already been all put together. If people who aren't creative probably can't understand that when you start creating something, you have no idea what it's going to be by the time you're done with it. So you can't necessarily think about things retroactively. And so as a result, there is a huge advantage to a reviewer who can already look at everything and how it all plays together already. You know.
Yeah, I guess. I think there's a lot of people, I think there's a lot of, like, authors or creatives who, like, really do just think about everything, you know?
There are.
And,
There
I
are.
mean, like
They may not necessarily be able to, like, tell you, because the way they they communicate is through their art anyway.
Yeah.
So they
which
wouldn't be
is
able to tell you
definitely-
why they did what they did, but they'd be able
Right.
to put it in because they knew it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, like if a shot emphasizes a character's, I don't know, despair or something, they weren't necessarily thinking like, now, to emphasize the character's despair, you know, I will crop his eyes here and I will color it like this. They just like drew the shot that looked right to them, and it emphasized the despair.
It's like kind of what
and
an analyst
and you can
does is that they...
you can retroactively point out the ways in which it emphasizes that despair.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, like, I mean, I could definitely see, especially on the level of, like, a comic artist, where it's more sort of intuitive like that, and it's, like, one guy, you know, making a thing. But, like, when it comes to, like, a show or a production or a film, and there's, like, multiple people approaching the angle of every shot, you know, every single scene is, like, sort of not necessarily designed by committee, but there's people have to talk about it to each other, you know? Like, my brother Victor, who's an aspiring film director, I guess I should just say he is a film director, he just hasn't made any, like, you know, professional films, but,
Gonna get that boy to Hollywood.
yeah, he's still trying to get into grad school, but,
Skip that shit.
he's you know, he's told me before, like, when he was working with this guy who's like an assistant director or like his lead camera guy for a couple of shorts they were doing, like, this guy had so little ability to understand the nuance in Victor's writing. Like, he had written the script and showed it to this guy, and the guy just didn't get any of it. Like, all of it was over his head. So Victor had to explain to him, like, exactly why every shot would be filmed the way it was, why every line was written the way it was, what it all meant, what each thing was trying to express, just so this guy would be on the same page as him when filming his movie, you know, or acting in it. That, in this particular case, he was acting in the script Ye Old Kitten's Paw. If any of you have seen that one, it was on It's on the Model Soul Productions channel, and the guy who was the lead actor in that, like,
I have
Is
just
that the guy with at the bar, and then he goes
Yeah.
to the
I
beach?
have seen that,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a cool script that was completely hamstrung by
Yeah.
the acting.
It was, and that guy, the guy who was the lead actor, is the one I'm talking about. He had no comprehension of what the script meant. Like, Victor had to carefully explain to him why the character would say these things, what they were thinking, what the message is, like, why this scene, why is it presented this way, you know. So in other words, Victor had thought about all that. And I don't know that he necessarily had, like you said, it became more analytical in retrospect, where, like, he wrote it emotionally, like, what made sense to him, but then when he had to, like, teach the actor what it meant, he had to then analyze it and explain it to him, you know. But I don't think that means he didn't put thought into it. He, you know, he just understood those things intrinsically and was able to write already knowing what would communicate that.
You know what? That reminds me of something I was doing, in fact, right now, actually, and yesterday, where I've written something into a script, and now I'm editing it in, and I find that upon reviewing the script that I have read, there's actually a few more questions that I have to answer in order to make the shot convey, you know, the sort of baseline idea that I was trying to get to. And I have to do this research and kind of figure out my own point, and then put it in there. And my whole point is here, like, there's a lot of thought that's going into all of this shit. You know?
Yeah, you know, one of your old videos, Digibro, you talk about, I don't know why I keep saying all those syllables each time.
Yeah, I know.
When
You're
you
like the only
first,
person who's done
I don't
that.
know, it's kind of warm today. I'm getting kind of twitchy.
Hot and bothered.
One of your oldest videos, you talk about authorial intent, and you say, you know, a lot of people, if they watch something and it sucks, they usually will accuse it of having been made thoughtlessly. Like, the people who did it just weren't putting that much thought into it. But what's more likely to be accurate is that a whole bunch of stupid thoughts were put into it.
Yeah.
For an easy example of
Sure.
this, you can watch Birdemic or Cool Cat Saves the Kids. People who clearly thought about everything that went into those films.
Man,
Yeah,
I'm
but
sick of The
they're-
Room not getting mentioned in these things. The Room's the best. Everyone needs
Well, yeah,
to give
that
it
one
respect.
too, but I'm sick
Alright,
of
good.
The Room being mentioned. That one's kind of an older, infamously bad movie. We're talking about the modern age here.
Birdemic's pretty old.
Well,
too.
yeah, in all the cases, like, yeah, those are just filmmakers who are incompetent and they don't know how to, like,
Yeah.
like, it's not that they didn't think about what they were doing. Yeah, like you said, stupid thoughts. Like, they don't understand, like, they don't know the technique. They don't know the craft. They don't know anything about what will resonate with other people. So the movie probably made sense to them, but, like, they just failed at communicating it to others. But that doesn't mean that they didn't, you know, try, that it didn't add
for
up in their own
example,
heads.
like, you know, the guy who made Cool Cat actually changed the movie some because of the critical response. I think mostly because
Right.
of YMS.
That pretty much
review
proves it, that he didn't
actually
think that
resonated
much.
with him on a couple of points. He was like, "Oh, that's a good point." Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's like ridiculous to me to think that anyone other than the author would be thinking harder about something than the fucking author. Like,
Well, if something is like, I mean, if something was like a completely corporate, cynical, you know, like
that means
retread-
even more thought's been put into
I
it.
think
not
what
not
Diggy's talking about
creatively,
is like
not creative thought.
Yeah, I don't think people are
necessarily.
judging it on the same basis as, like, okay, we got, like in Jack and Jill, a lot of thought was put into that product placement. That shit was, like,
Yeah.
almost on
No,
another
that's
level.
that's what I mean. Like, Jack and Jill, everything that's in the movie, they knew what they were doing.
That's
They
true.
just didn't do good work. They
Yeah.
deliberately did not do good work. They decided to make something lazy.
Yeah,
You know, but that doesn't mean that it like they understand it less than you do by watching it. Like, if you watch that movie and you analyze all the product placement and you say this movie was clearly made with this intention, it probably was made with that intention, you know.
Okay, well, here's a question, because I believe we're tending to count the collective thought of the creative and production teams behind something.
Yeah.
So should we also square that against the collective thought of the fan base? Because I was scrambling to come up with an example of something that the fans have thought about more than the creators. Sonic Adventure 2. Maybe?
Sure.
That one. And
Sonic
I think
in
if you were-
general, I guess. I mean, look
yeah,
at the
but
amount
that
of
one
time-
especially. That
Okay.
particular one especially. I feel like maybe the amount of additional narrative that people have added themselves into
Right.
like
Okay, but
outweighs
it's one thing to interpret things from the story. It's another to write fan fiction about it, and I just don't know
guess.
which you're referring
Well, I
to.
think there's a level where it becomes just death of the author thinking, right? Like, maybe, I don't know how much the fans understand that they're doing it, but when you get to that point where it's obviously not what the author intended, then that's where you're invoking death of the author and making your own story, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, part of this debate, like, I guess what I'm trying to do here is not so much to say that there's, like, a definite line between the two and, like, some people are right and some people are wrong. I just want to sort of push it back. I feel like people have reached a point of assuming, because of, like, death of the author and because of analysis and stuff, that people are starting to think that authors don't think as much as they do about shit, you know, where I think that the majority of stuff that people get out of work is almost always intentional, and then there's, like, that smaller amount of, like, stuff we put into it, the headcanons and the reading too deep shit, you know?
Right, and then there's the thing that the beginner's guide game it commentates on is, don't try to comment on the author because you're going to be wrong.
Right.
Well,
And
that's
then
on the
Aaron
author
Signal made that video
specifically.
about it, made that video explaining it, and it was a game about not explaining things, and he has this faux existential crisis at the end that I thought was amusing. Because
I don't think that was a faux existential crisis.
Well, I mean,
think
it
that was a
was-
real existential
Well, I
crisis.
mean, it was scripted, but he
Right.
tried to make it seem like it wasn't. And to me, it was amusing and made me feel very smugly superior because personally, I've never felt like this was that's never something that I've had to reconcile. It's never something that I felt was a problem. For me, whenever if I think something about the intention of an author, it's only because I'm very, very confident in it based on everything I know.
Right.
And I don't think that I'm going to be wrong, and I don't say things that are like stretches. So for me, it's not an issue.
Pretty much everybody, if you talk about Evangelion, everyone always brings up how Hideaki Anno was depressed and he was interested in psychology and all that. But, like, no one got that because they just watched Eva and assumed that about him. It's like, that's what he said. He said, I was depressed. I made this show about being depressed, you know? And so it's like, okay, we got that. And, like, it's cool because, you know, that kind of authorial intent can inform your enjoyment of a show where, like, there's a lot of people who like Ava even more because they know that. They're like,
Yeah.
Now that I understand what he was trying to communicate, I can resonate with it that much
So when
more.
it comes to reviewers and analysts and the fans of said reviewers and analysts, I guess they have the question of, well, how much are you supposed to talk about the author and how much are you supposed to talk about your own interpretation? Well, I'll tell you what, my standard is I talk about whichever one is the most interesting. There are some videos I've done where sometimes I'll play a game or watch a thing, and my opinion of it is really boring. Even if I liked it or I hated it, I just think my opinion is boring, and if I made a video out of it, I would barely talk about my opinion. And then sometimes I think that where it came from was not that interesting to me, or vice versa, or both. And so... Like, for example, there was an indie game that came out in late 2015 that was very popular that I'm not going to name because we bring it up in every episode of the show. And
Thank you, Davu. I really appreciate that.
and that game comes from such a similar... I feel like it comes from a pretty similar place as me, because there's a lot of things in it that remind me of a couple of games that I made that aren't very good at all, but there's certain elements of that particular game that are so similar in such a specific way to games I made, and I only made a few, that made me think, wow, this is a work where my opinion and the opinion of the author are, like, equally interesting. And, yeah.
You know, I have made a couple of videos where I deliberately went, like, way out of the realm of what the show seemed to be intended to talk about. But I always sort of, I don't know how well I signposted it. I think I did, because I made them kind of funny, but, like, I have the video No Kome and Nihilism, which is where I, like, way overread into, like, a harem show that, like, in a way that is obviously not intentional, but it was funny.
Oh, right. I remember that one.
Well, for
yeah,
me,
that came through.
I couldn't really tell that at first because I didn't know anything about the show, so I
could
didn't
tell
know
based
what
on the
kind of show
title
that
and the
was.
appearance of the show that was the case.
Yeah, I
and
wasn't
then
very
with
perceptive.
the food, sex, and life in Kofuku Graffiti episode, where that one as well, where, like,
Sure.
the show's just about cute girls eating food, and I like tried to take it to this philosophical place of like eating food is sexy because it reminds us of life and childbirth or something. Like it was clearly meant to be like an almost irreverent like
for me,
analysis.
If there's some like trashy or fun-loving, just regular run-of-the-mill, like comedy action thing that isn't deep, but it inspires deep thoughts in me, the feeling of watching that is exactly, I mean, like, not that different from if it really was some big highbrow artsy thing. If it makes me think really advanced things, then it feels the same way to me, whether or not it tries to be. So
it's just a matter of like...
I just forget. If something makes me think philosophically, I just consider it to be a philosophical deep show.
Yeah. Like, I mean, and I'm not saying it's not because of that, but like, it's definitely a difference where like with those shows, I in no way think the author intended the things that I was saying about the shows, but like, there's so many other shows that I talk about where I totally do, and like, and those two videos were so out there and far-fetched that I don't think anyone would like assume that I thought that the author meant that. Like, if someone told me you're reading too deep into this, I'd be like, yeah, that's the joke.
So your authorial intent was that the other person's authorial intent was not being addressed correctly.
Your authorial intent was their authorial intent, but their...
I like stuff.
It's my favorite. I stepped on a frog. I hope it wasn't an ancestor.
Okay, some people don't seem to understand.
Donatello should be the PCP mascot. No, go on. Sorry.
That you can. Some people don't seem to understand that you can talk about a work and analyze a work and bring up the themes of a work without necessarily attributing those things to authorial intent. Sometimes anything you say about a show or a thing, people will hear as you're saying that, this is what the author intended, when it isn't.
What is the point of making that distinction? I don't get, like, if you point out what the author...
If you say something's a theme of a show, someone might counter with, oh, that's dumb. Obviously the author didn't mean for that to be there, which is not fair.
The authors don't always, mean for things to happen. So who cares?
I know,
the author.
But
like at the same time, if you're talking about just the show, or just the author,
I got X out of a show, and someone says, but the author didn't intend that. I mean, that's an invalid point. That does not matter.
I think a lot of viewers or listeners of this podcast may be wondering, like, where are we coming from on this? Why is this a topic of concern
because Digi wanted
us?
to. Because
that's all it is.
Can I say? I want to say what I think the concern is that we put a lot of effort into stating our opinions or our thoughts or our interpretations into an entertaining product. Yeah. And I think we're pretty well trained. We've pretty well conditioned ourselves to not say our opinion of something unless it's going to be interesting or funny. Right. Whereas most commenters just want to say their opinions and don't want to put in the effort. And so they'll just either hide behind authorial intent or hide behind death of the author as a cheap, quick tool to just categorically back up whatever they want to say without being funny or interesting about it.
Yeah, and to use either one of those as a categorical defense is wrong, because both of those are just like, accepting authorial intent as valid and totally throwing it out as a valid, interpretation of the work are just two different ways of looking at a thing. You can't say, oh, this wasn't intended by the author, therefore it's worthless. You also can't say, oh, it doesn't matter what the author intended because I'm not interested in it. Those are just your fucking opinions. On a similar note, Devu, did you see that legendary thread that I got into on the Reddit arguing about the game that shall not be named and your video about it?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, talk about that.
That guy had such specific idea. He had such specific ideas about what the game should have been, and he had very specific ideas about how you should have presented your ideas. And it finally got to the point. He finally made a response that I read it and I understood what he was saying, but every single thing that he said was just so wrong that I had no retort for any of it. I finally was just like, I think everything you just said is wrong, and that's all I have to say. And he was
Yeah.
like, okay, good day, sir. And
You
I
hit
said,
argument bedrock. That's a good
And
step.
I think
yeah, we
one of
hit
the big-
argument bedrock at
That's
that
kind of
point.
pulling us back to our reviewer rules episode where we talk
Right.
about people who have their rules about what you need to talk
Now,
about.
in
Oh,
regards
yeah,
to
this
that
guy
discussion,
was like very specifically. You should have said this. You needed to say that, and because you didn't, your video was bad. I was like, geez,
Right.
You know,
man,
on a
lay
small
off.
level, I always hate when I get a comment like, I don't know, when you talk about a game, like if you were to make a video about like, and then you're like, but you
Wait,
did
whoa,
say
whoa, whoa.
you did say get dunked
What?
on, dude.
No, no.
What, are we not supposed to talk about
It
that?
can't-
You
No.
fucking
We've all
idiot.
been
Have you
trying
not
to
been
say the
picking
game
up on
that is
this?
not named.
I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Wow.
Just censor that. Just
Amazing.
censor that. Whoever's editing
Okay.
this, censor that.
Yeah.
Yeah, put a
No
put
one
a
should
censor
know.
bleep.
Devu might actually censor
I
that.
think he might.
Because I think he's
I'd-
editing.
Yeah.
What?
I'd like to
okay,
talk
fine.
about like the idea that if an author, like say Hidetaki Miyazaki, or whatever his name is, the
Yeah, that's the
Dark
right
Souls guy,
Yeah.
the Dark
That
Souls,
fellow.
Demon Souls guy,
Hirohito Nagasaki. Yeah.
he did good games, all of them, and like he's got like a track record of like him being a director and good games coming from it, and it's if you could. I mean, it feels like it's easier to say, yeah, that's what he intended when you're
Yeah.
like analyzing his next game, because
Well, that's the thing. Like with like when I start doing my stuff where I really lean hard on like this is what they intended for this shot to be. It's usually because I'm like pretty confident that creator knows their shit. You know, like someone like Miyazaki, you don't just make 3 games that are all perfect on accident. You know,
Yeah.
like he clearly knows what the fuck he's doing. He clearly. Every element of the
Well-
game, it's as Mr. Beaton called it, the Gesamtkunstwerk, where everything about it is perfect and it all plays into each other perfectly. You know,
Impressed you remembered that word.
I think it's a case. I think it's a case of he just had very specific ideas about what the game should be,
Yeah.
and they ended up being good ideas that really resonated with people. And then he, doggedly stuck to them and that philosophy through all of his games, which is what made them good.
I certainly think that like yeah, maybe he didn't know that this was going to be something everyone would think was the best idea
No way.
ever, but
No
he
way.
definitely knew what he was doing. Like
I
he
think-
knew
he had
why
a-
all
he
this
had a
fair
shit
to
vision.
say
worked.
that if something goes well, it's probably because he decided that was his
Yeah.
intent for it to happen. Like,
I mean,
here's-
there's
Yeah, I
definitely
agree.
plenty of stuff where the author completely did everything intentionally and thought they were making something great and no one liked it. Like, that's definitely a thing that happens, but it's still, the author understood, they did what they wanted to do, you know?
it's just harder. It's just harder to say definitively when they've only done like 1 or 2 things.
Right. Like, sometimes you can look at a work and you can say, that this was not what they intended and it got fucked up somewhere, right?
Sure.
Like, for instance, when Max Landis was the screenwriter, Max Landis was interviewed by Red Letter Media, and he was talking about how, once he sells off a script and once they go and make it, it can be changed so fundamentally that it basically doesn't like it's not even his work anymore. Like he was saying that all the nuance of the script can become so different in the film version that it's basically a different product. And so, like, to him, the film is no longer, like, written by Max Landis by the time it's made. The script was written by Max Landis. The film is just its own thing that, that exists with or without him. So I definitely think that if you tried to watch Max Landis' films and then be like, this is what his authorial intent is, then it would be lost somewhere, because it's not necessarily coming out to be what he wanted it to be. Whereas, other cases where it's like if someone drew a comic and they seem to be very confident in their comic that everything in it is exactly what they intended, and then you read it and you're like, this is shit, it just means that their authorial intent was stupid,
Yeah, when it comes to independence,
That's
like,
me. My authorial. Are you saying my authorial intent was stupid, Digi?
No,
Just
I
'cause
like,
you didn't like my
the
shit.
Vapors.
I'll kill you. Yeah, no. I
It
know
was
you, I
good
know you're a
comic.
man.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Like, I'm sure it's like I read the first page of the Vapors Chapter 2, and Vincent takes the book Infinite Jest, and he's so sure that having this particular book is going to make him like a king, you know, that people are going to worship him.
Yeah,
and when
people admire his
obviously
wisdom.
you chose Infinite Jest because it's the perfect book for that. You know? What the
I think
hell
so.
is that?
Is that guy trying to talk and failing?
No, it was just sorry. I made a noise. Ignore it.
So yes, Digi, I guess my authorial intent did shine through in that one.
Right,
Because that's
like,
exactly what I meant it to be.
I looked at it and I thought, oh my god, it's Infinite Jest, a giant book that I have, for years, thought the title sounded so cool that I've wanted to read it. And I'm pretty sure I got the audiobook because I accidentally had an Audible subscription for like a year and didn't know I was paying for it. So I used all the points I'd built up to buy like a fuckload of books. And I still haven't listened to it. So like that particular book, I was like, I completely understood why that one. Why Infinite Jest, you know?
It's got like an air of mystery around it, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of got like a little aura, sort of.
Well, it's got the title alone like makes it sound like it's about the whole fucking universe, you know?
Yeah.
Infinite Jest. It's like ironic and meta at the same time as everything else, you know? Like it's got that. It's infinite, but it's a joke. Like all of infinity is a joke, you know? It's
I
like
know, man. You're totally right that I chose it very deliberately, based on, you know.
And that's
was
that's
just a
the
good
next
fit.
part of this I wanted to get into. Like part of the incentive to do this podcast was that I wanted us to talk about how the reason we understand that creators put a lot of thought into their shit is because we're all creators and we put a lot of thought into our shit.
Well,
Yeah.
not
You know?
me, but yeah.
Well, except Gib, obviously.
Like I can't imagine. I mean, it depends on the.
Look, all right.
Like I can't imagine putting something in something that I make without. I mean, you gotta at least think about it a little
Here's-
bit.
here's
if it's
the-
deliberately
here's what
made.
bothers
with a
me
comic,
to like
you've got to
crazy.
draw it all.
Yeah,
there's
in a
this-
comic especially.
there's this
but in lots
meme
of things.
that was going around. I don't know if it's a meme per se, but it's something that like people were posting all over the internet, where it's what your English teacher told you is the drapes are blue because they represent the character's depression, and what the author meant was the drapes are fucking blue. This is an
Yeah.
image that got posted everywhere. People took it as like fuck my English teacher, fuck intellectualism, reading is just dumb, you know? And I'm sitting here like,
And of course,
if I was an author and I was writing a scene where I was going to mention the drapes and I wanted to mention what color they were, then the first thought going through my head is, what color will convey the tone of this scene? If it's a sad scene, I would say the fucking drapes were blue. Or if they were yellow, I would say that the yellow of the drapes contrasts with, like, he was driven mad by how the yellow drapes didn't reflect his fucking sad mood, and
more
he tore
commonly,
them down.
it could be like,
you know?
you could mention that like it's raining and someone's died. Like that's a more common thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's also
I
a
mean-
thing that English teachers tell you to
And
think
let me
about.
explain this from a practical perspective. Let's say I'm making that scene, and let's say I'm doing it in a comic, and so I drew the drapes, and I click on the fill bucket tool and I'm going to select a color. In the time that it will take for me to drag my mouse over to the color selector, I will probably be able to come to the very obvious conclusion that blue will be the saddest color. It's not even like hard from a schematic standpoint, and that's why it's possible. Because you have to realize, like, when I was scrambling to come up with an example of where fans thought about it harder than the authors, I thought, the Beatles? Like, no. They spent like a year making each of their albums for an entire decade. There's no way anyone could top that. Because they have so much time. It's their job. If you have a job and you make hamburgers and you think about how many hamburgers you make, every one of those hamburgers represents a thought or a consideration or an intent in a creative work that a full-time artist has. So just understand, it's not an impractical thing to do is to think about everything you put in. It's very common.
It's not like if you're an artist or creative, this stuff like it instantly makes sense to you. Like the example that I wanted to bring up the most when I was planning this podcast, because it's such a weird specific thing that didn't need to be done, but I did it, was when I made that drunken rant about the life of Pablo, the new Kanye West album. And it's just like, for all intents and purposes, I got up in front of a camera, drunk as shit, and just rambled into it about my opinions on this album. But what I did before I started filming was, I have a backdrop where I have like a bunch of vinyl albums and a bunch of art books. And I took down one of my anime art books, and I put up a vinyl album of Rat King's So It Goes. And the reason for that is that I wanted to have one really great rap album in the background so that if anyone questioned my credentials of reviewing rap, I would have proof that I like rap music. That was
You should have also put a black friend in the frame so they could know that you're also, it's appropriate for you to be judging them.
I actually did get a couple of, like, don't review black music comments, and I banned them.
Jeez. Well, that's just Kanye's meme now, so.
But, and I had people who pointed out the Rat King album. They're like, oh, man, sick Rat King album back there,
So
because,
it worked,
like, yeah, like, I don't know that
like
made them,
fiddle.
like, take my opinion more seriously, per se, but it was just, like, I wanted it to be somewhere back there because I looked at my collection and I said, well, what I see from where I'm sitting is like a pop album, a rock album, and an R&B album. None of this is gonna make people think like people might just say, oh, you don't like rap music. So I'm like, all right, I'll put in the best fucking rap album of last year.
Here's a thought. You definitely put the Rat King album there deliberately.
Yes,
but to the viewer, it's open to interpretation what you meant by that. Like some people might say, "Oh, he's here to show that he does have good taste in rap," but someone else maybe might think that you're trying to draw like a comparison between Pablo and Rat King and try to say, "Oh, this is also an overrated album." Why
would I own it if it was an overrated album?
I bet you own some overrated album.
Why would I own it on
just
vinyl if it was an overrated album? But
I'm just saying.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, there are multiple. There you can interpret a thing different ways. Like the Blue Drapes thing. Like maybe it's meant to convey depression, or maybe it ties into some other aspect of the character, the blueness, or maybe it's just a throwaway detail that isn't meant to convey anything.
The solution,
it is deliberate. It is included deliberately, but it isn't always clear cut.
Right.
The deliberation
so the solution to this
for.
problem is interviews. Get interviewers, and this is a side note. Interviewers. Here's a rule for interviewers. Before you interview someone, watch all the other interviews that person has done and write a list of all the questions that have already been asked to them, especially the ones that have been asked 50,000 times, and don't ask any of those. And if you can't come up with any new questions, don't do the interview. Just a completely unrelated thing. But good interviews are how you can dig into creative intent, which is why I think that if
an interview serves a more insidious purpose of just giving exposure and not giving a shit about finding out anything more than we already know.
But we're talking about the morals here.
In fairness, like most, I mean, I won't say most, but like a large percentage of creatives want their stuff to be interpreted by the viewer, and they don't like explaining it.
Right, and so if they don't want to, then just forget about them.
I am 100% like that.
Yeah.
I feel that way 100%.
I wish I could be like that, but I can't. Like, I will absolutely explain why I
do not try
it
all. If someone wanted to do a 7-hour interview with me to explain everything I've ever made, I absolutely would.
I have.
Would feel.
Yeah. I don't want
to.
Because
24-hour.
If you do that, and you sit down and you explain every single thing that you thought, there is absolutely no room for anyone to interpret otherwise.
But that's not true because that means that people everyone has to make the decision of whether or not they want to. They want to take the author seriously. I do think because like authors, what authors are afraid of when they don't like say that stuff is that they're afraid that people will latch on to everything they say and not want to interpret it differently because a lot of people do value authorial intent as like the most valuable thing, which is paradoxically why they get mad at you for supposedly overanalyzing something, because they want to believe in authorial intent as like as what matters. But if what you say was the author's intent like is more advanced than what they had already thought, then it's a disconnect. It's like, oh god, I'm thinking about it wrong. I didn't understand it as well as I should have.
I think both are fun. I think people understanding exactly why I did something and getting the same thing out of it is cool, and people getting something out of it that I couldn't have thought of is cool. I like both.
Right. There's definitely been plenty of times where people have like interpreted something really weird out of my work, and I've been like, that's cool, man. I mean, even just all the people who take my videos as like motivational speaking or something, like so many people who are like, I got through depression because of your videos. I'm like, I didn't intend that, but okay, tons of shit like that, But my point is just simply that with the whole Life of Pablo thing, that like that was something that I threw together in 5 minutes, but I did think about it and put it in there, and that's how easy it is, And like even mistakes in my work, I know what they all are. You know, every time someone corrects me on something in a video, it's like, I know, I edited it, I looked at it, I stared at it, or I heard it, you know?
Well, you've had things that you know, should, I mean, you don't always know every single thing, right? You've been corrected in the past. Does that mean nobody should ever correct you, you know?
Yes. Because I don't want, like, I don't get what they think they're, like, I can't change it. It's out already, you know?
So what? So, like, I mean, the comments are a part of the universe of this video. That's the criticism, you know? It exists to, you know, correct
Only
mistakes
if I
and
don't
shit.
block those comments.
There's a lot, by the way, listeners who haven't heard of us before. There's a lot more nuance to Digi's opinions on blocking comments here that he's not explaining. So don't call him a hypocrite. There's more to it than that.
I think
that's
currently,
Don't read too much into his intent.
it's overly optimistic to assume anyone watching hasn't seen most of our content, but maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Oh, I don't know. I think that's, well, maybe they're just new and they're not familiar yet.
Yeah, sure.
Just watch my video on closing comments over on Digibro After Dark.
Yeah, very.
I went in deep about it. But, yeah, no, I like, there are some times where people will correct, like, my pronunciation of something, and I did not know that I had pronounced it
Dude, you
wrong.
mispronounce words all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of the
You're getting
time I
better,
do
though.
it on
That's
purpose
true.
and knowingly. Like
Why?
Yeah, why
because
not
I
just speak
don't
right?
like
I don't
the
like
other
that.
pronunciation. Like, I
Well,
like
you
to
should
say
be
niche.
corrected.
It's just how I say it.
I'm not interested in your headcanon of how words should be pronounced, you know?
But my
We have a
point
shared
is,
language
like,
here. We're trying to run a society, and you're violating the whole operation with your going rogue. You're going
dude, there's
off-road.
so many words that I've just made up and invented for my videos or found whole new uses
It's like,
for.
okay, you know what it's like? It's like I have, when I was a kid, I listened to the Foolie Cooley soundtrack all the time. It was like my favorite thing to listen to. And as a result, since I didn't speak Japanese at all, I made up all these lyrics. Now, if I make a lyric video to Little Busters or whatever, and I write down all my headcanon lyrics, is it wrong for people to correct me because that's my version of the song?
Saying a
I would
word
say that
differently
you
is
should-
not different. Is not the same as changing the word. Like, I don't think anybody would be confused if Digi said niche or niche.
yeah.
There's nothing else that
there's
sounds
that
like
thing
niche.
that hits you in the head, and you're like, oh, something's wrong here. What's going on
Yeah,
here?
and you
cares?
should lock that feeling deep down inside because no one fucking cares. Look, if I left a comment every time I was bothered by the way someone pronounced something, I would never stop leaving comments.
Hey, you know, I'm just
every
saying.
video I've ever seen has a pronunciation that bothers me in it. You know, like no
fair
one
enough.
knows how to
You're not
pronounce
wrong. I'm
Japanese
just saying.
shit.
I don't-
No one
I
knows
don't
how to
comment
pronounce other
I don't
shit.
comment on your weird pronunciations, so I guess we're at an impasse here.
I don't know. I thought there
But-
were lots of bad pronunciations in the Vapors.
Yeah.
That was
yeah,
intended
I'm
as a
so-
joke
I-
because that's impossible because it's not audio.
Yeah.
That was
Everything I
apologize.
say is. I'm actually American, but I just pronounce everything wrong.
This whole
You just
pronunciation.
think that's how it's
You've all
pronounced.
been
That's what
fooled
gets
by
to me the most is that like everyone has different dialects. So like to say that I can't pronounce a word a certain way is like I don't get
Yeah,
where the
that's
disconnect
true.
comes from. Like
It's
just
not-
because no one else pronounces it that way doesn't mean that it's not a dialect that is
Hey,
specific to me.
you know, I
I can actually agree with that.
I think
there's no really wrong way to say anything.
And I think the fact that people get upset about
Well, then you're just getting to the
pronunciations-
fundamental point of language itself.
Well,
It's,
I think what
it's
this
a
is,
rabbit
why people get bothered about pronunciations, plays into the very first episode of Hello Internet, which was called Being Wrong on the Internet. Because, Digi, I have a question. How many times do people correct your pronunciation, and how angry are they about correcting your pronunciation if you pronounced it on a podcast or a Let's Play? Is it less intense?
I would say it's less intense, but it is still very much
Right,
there.
but it is less intense, and I think that's because in a proper video, people expect you to have this level of professionalism and objectivity, not just objectivity of opinions. Even people who understand subjective
Yeah.
opinions still think there's like objective standards you have to play into, which is, I think, another category of this whole author.
Davu, what was the name of that video?
Being Wrong on the Internet. It was the first episode of the Hello Internet podcast.
I
And
just came to say hello, internet.
God,
Alright.
kill
I
yourself.
don't know why. That's the funniest thing I've ever thought of in my entire life.
Right.
Anyways,
Good one.
Yeah, I nailed it. Okay.
yeah, you know, I was getting nailed for in my latest video. I said Nodame Cantabile when
Oh, yeah.
I guess it's pronounced cantabile, which is like a fucking Spanish or Italian word. I'm like, why would like, all these people are shitting on me for it, and I'm like, why would you expect me to be able to pronounce a fucking Italian word? When have I ever suggested that I know any Italian at all? You know, like, I don't get, like, to me, when I hear...
there are some things that humans are expected to do, you know,
Look,
outside of what
video,
anime reviewers.
This has always stuck out with me in my mind, right? There was this one time that I watched, like, one of the first anime video reviews I saw was this British guy talking about Hajime no Ippo, right? And the way he kept pronouncing it was Hajime no Ippo. And, like,
did he watch the show? They say the name over and over.
Yeah, but he's, like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, well, he's British. Yeah. Words sound different when they come out of his mouth. And the funny thing is, even though at first I was like, oh, God, but then over time, that's now how I pronounce it more often than not. I now love saying Hajime no Ippo. Like, dude, it's hilarious to me.
We need the Hippo to do a review of the Ippo.
Yeah.
Get on that. Get on that.
All right.
And, like,
sure.
I knew what he was talking about. I knew what the show was. Like, he probably, on some level, is aware that he probably doesn't know how to pronounce it because it's a fucking Japanese name. You know, like, the reason I say Cantabile in my video is that I learned that show in 2007 when I was 16, so I didn't think at all about the pronunciation. And I've just been saying it that way for 9 years. And there was a moment when I started editing the video, like, once I had the audio figured out and I started laying in clips, I went, oh my God, I probably pronounced this wrong. Like, Cantabile can't be a word, you know? But then I went, everyone knows what I'm talking about. It doesn't fucking matter. And I finished editing the video, you know? And then I've got people who were, like, commenting, I almost vomited when I heard Cantabile.
That makes sense. That's appropriate thematically.
Like,
I don't think that's what they
like
bile.
We've gone pretty far afield. I think we've gone pretty far afield of the topic of authorial
Yeah,
intent
well, guess
by
what?
now.
Pronunciation is too funny, so we're going to keep talking about it. People may have realized there's a trend in Digi's videos. Whenever he talks about a particular character from Hunter x Hunter, he always goes, Killua! I can't even do it correctly.
Yes,
Can you please...
Killua.
Yeah.
Because in the first video I did, I said Killua, and people fucking... there was hundreds of comments pissed off at me for the way I pronounced Killua.
That's obviously the right way to do it, because everything else sounds gay and stupid.
Yes, it's Killua. Killua.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of videos
Killua.
where you just talk
And, like,
incessantly.
that's one of the few concessions I've made just because there were so
weebs.
many comments about it that I couldn't... I was like, I don't want to live through this again. Like, I'm going to change... It's not how I would ever pronounce it in my everyday life. If I was talking about the show to anyone, I'd say Killua because that sounds right, or Killua. Like, it might have been how I said it, but, like... Killua. It's got to be that way in the video, and no one complains when I say it that way. So, Killua. Like, it completely changes the entire tone of my voice. Like, you're listening to me speak in a normal American accent, and then suddenly, and in Hunter x Hunter, Killua has this great character arc. Like, it sounds fucking stupid.
And the most intense example was the pronunciation of Shin Seiki Evangelion.
Yes, which was very intentional.
Because you go Evangelion, and I go Evangelion because I hear you talk about it more than anyone else.
Yes.
When Demo says Evangelion, I'm like, okay, fine, and people can go Evangelion or Uvangelion or Oevangelion, whatever. But people got mad that your first syllable was different, and so you wanted to highlight the fact that the Japanese title is not even the same words.
No, it's Shinseiki Evangelion.
So this goes into people having these false ideas that there's like these objective standards of pronunciation that you're supposed to hold up to, which brings us to this.
I just wanted to say one pronunciation thing that I kind of might be amusing.
Yeah.
I never watched Dragon Ball Z as a kid, but I did read the manga of Dragon Ball.
Did you call it Dragon Balls?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, but I pronounce Kamehameha like Kami. Ha-me-ha, because that's how it's written.
Sure.
Instead of the Kamehameha, and I always think Kamehameha is stupid,
but it's
and I'm the
correct.
cool guy.
I read Sasuke as Sasuke for the longest time.
Really? Sasuke is really cool. Sakura the Beautiful. Naruto.
I thought it was Sasuke.
Yeah. Sasuke.
Oh man, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Sasuke.
Oh, so you're saying that you
Sasuke.
read it before you saw the show?
I just
way
saw
I'm
before.
surprised.
I
That
read
was
it in
before I gave a
2003.
shit. Yeah,
I read it before the show existed. But yeah, anyway, Davu, what were you going to use that to branch back into authorial
that
intent?
stupid Reddit moderator guy who disrespected Jesse. Endless Jess's professionalism.
His
AMV. It's a shame he's not on this podcast right now because the reason he's not, the intention he has for not being on this podcast is he's asleep. So
yeah,
you know.
So let me explain this conflict very quickly. There's this Reddit Jesse made an AMV of Evangelion and posted it on the our Ava subreddit, and the moderator there like jumped down Jesse's throat for the fact that he had changed the aspect ratio of the video, and this guy was like, I was only able to last 10 seconds and I just wanted to throw up because your aspect. A lot of people talking about throwing up lately in response to shitty videos. He was like, I just wanted to throw up because you changed the aspect ratio, and he literally said any professional AMV competition would have thrown this out immediately.
Yeah, he said
and
any
it's like,
reputable AMV contest.
Yeah. Which is the weirdest thing to say, because it's not an AMV contest submission. It's some video some guy made on YouTube for fun.
Yeah, and
for
later
himself.
on,
he's using this other standard.
Later on, this guy was like, you know, you in the professional world, you have to do professional correct things. You have to do X, you have to do Y, and if you do it wrong, you'll get fired. And I pointed out, look, if
from YouTube.
If this guy were working for a company, if you were working for a company and they told you to not stretch the aspect ratio, he wouldn't. Right. And I told him, this guy is
you don't understand. This guy would be laughed out of any professional AMV contest that he tried to submit to.
Ben, I want to make a shitcom now called Fired from YouTube, starring Jesse Wood over the giant Eva AMV debacle.
Guy, I really like how you accidentally said that as shitcom.
What? Did I? That was my authorial intent all along.
Yeah.
There we go.
I choose to ascribe that to the work that you just created, that meaning.
All right.
Yeah, so like I told this guy, look, Jesse, this guy is a professional YouTuber, you realize? He puts thought into what he's doing. He's not like an amateur.
You know, I think the only kind of sitcom Jesse would like to be in is a shitcom, but sorry.
Yeah. And I can understand why these people on our Ava didn't understand that Jesse is like an actual YouTuber.
The kind of person who must hang out on our Ava has got to be the most
moderate
insufferable...
our Ava.
The moderator, holy
and
shit,
according
that's another
to
level.
his like tag on the site, he's also a moderator of avageeks.org.
Ooh,
yeah,
boy,
I looked into this guy.
So
a
this
little
guy's
bit.
like a lifer.
This guy spends a lot of time,
and he will not accept the skewing of the aspect ratio of his precious work.
Right, because what I really wanted to rip into this guy for,
not that it's his work,
not that I didn't get around to it, but this guy spends so much time being moderators of websites. How much time does he have being in this so-called professional world here? You know,
probably
Who
none.
cares
I mean,
about
has he
your
done any?
credentials?
What's his standard?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I feel like any one of us have accomplished way more artistically than this guy.
Right.
And so I was trying to phrase that to him in a really soft way by being like, you know, you're more of a technical person. You're not much of an aesthetics person. You have to understand that aesthetics are also important. He's like, no, these are objective facts. Like he said the word objective over and over again. And I said,
and Jesse clarified so many times, like, dude, this is not an objective thing. Like, you can have your standard, but like, obviously there are times
we
when
prefer
changing
the
the aspect
stretching
ratio
technique.
might
All
be a
of us
better way to
think
go.
that the stretching is better. And I said,
Yeah,
you realize this guy is a professional YouTuber, to which this moderator said, and I quote, no, he's not. Not by a long shot. All of those pauses.
See,
were
he's making the word
sentences.
he's using some other definition or something. It's...
Well, he literally did not understand that Jesse is literally a fucking professional YouTuber.
Yeah, because then he went onto his Patreon and was like, well, you're not making that much money, and I pointed out, yes, he is. This guy doesn't even do his stats
He looked at Jesse's Patreon and saw the amount that he makes, and then he looked at My Japanese Animes and assumed that was the only channel, so he was like, 11 videos over the course of the year, that means you only made like $3,000, and Jess is like,
he has no idea what he's dealing with.
How about
here.
you quit it with the financial analysis? Anyway, the point is, authorial intent. Jesse wanted the stretched aspect ratio. It was on purpose. It wasn't because he didn't understand what was aesthetically appropriate. He fucking wanted that look, and I think personally, it looks better that way.
Yeah,
I had no idea it was stretched. I thought it was.
Right. Yeah, I hadn't noticed.
I
it
didn't
all.
even notice either. Yeah.
And this guy is like the worst example of when this philosophy goes awry, because this guy just insistently said, these are objective, true standards based on my experience. You don't have experience. Making YouTube videos doesn't count. Running AMV contests counts.
Yeah.
Not that he had won any, of course.
Right.
I mean, if he did, he should have brought it up, but, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
He specifically said that if he won some, that would be pretentious. But just saying he was part of them isn't pretentious. Yeah, this guy's logic Look, this guy has
Wait,
professional.
No, that would
I
give you
remember
fucking
that.
a
challenges
reasonable
logic.
reason to be saying the things you're saying. Whatever.
I got
All
to-
right,
Let's
I'm
get
gonna
past
get this
this
onto.
guy.
We're gonna get
I
onto
gotta-
another topic here.
I have to have a little bit of payoff to this story. Just one sentence.
Okay.
I eventually basically indirectly called this guy a smug asshole because that, on the internet, you're allowed to be a smug asshole, but you're not allowed to call people a smug asshole. So he banned me from our Ava for 30 days. And then later on, I emailed him, I PM'd him saying, you represent the worst ideas that I absolutely oppose. Like, your
Yeah,
ideas are
yeah.
terrible. And so he perma-banned me from our Ava. And so then I, in a genius move, perma-banned him from the Procrastinators. And so,
Justice at last.
got mutually assured destruction.
yes, just you wait when
This
we
is the
become
Cold
super
War of-
famous,
of-
and he'll want to get in on the huge TPC sensation. He
Yeah.
won't be allowed, and he'll wish that day he had taken a different
it's
course
like
of
being
action.
it's like being banished from Athens.
Yep.
There's
Yeah.
no worse fate. There's nothing worse.
All right, let me move into another thing. So I've been saying all this shit about how authors totally intend to put all this stuff there, and now I'm going to backpedal a little and say that authorship, like the genius of it, is not just having amazing ideas, but also being able to recognize when great shit just falls into your lap.
Sure. of
Because
course.
like an amazing amount of my editing is serendipitous. Like I just throw a clip into the editor and I'll happen to notice that there's like one scene that just happens to match up with what I'm saying, and then I base everything around that. Like for instance, I did all these AMV compilations recently, and each one I would just like set up all the clips from the person, and then I'd try to find a song that vaguely had the same tone as those clips, and then I'd put it in, and then like there'd be little moments where the animation just so happens to coincide exactly with the music, and then I'd just time everything around that. So like all the clips are just laid in chronological order. There's no like advanced editing. It just so happens that I was able to find songs that perfectly timed with certain moments. So like it looks way more thoughtful than it really was, just because I was able to recognize small, match cuts and stuff like that. So like yeah, I think a big part of creativity is not just being
hang
a
on,
genius,
Gigi.
but recognizing accidental genius and being able to tailor it to fit what you're doing.
it's
you
a
know?
hard knock life
hang on,
being
Gigi.
a genius.
Didn't what you just said conflict with what you were saying before? You said before that it's basically impossible that a viewer can think more about a work than the creator did. But from what you just said, it seems like sometimes a creator can just kind of do something haphazardly and just sort of have it work out.
Yeah, I don't
Well, he
think,
did say it was contradictory.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily that it's contradictory per se, because
It's just
I think
not a
that
rule.
I think that as an author, your ability to recognize those things and then make them work is also part of what is the skill set,
Right.
Like
I
the
agree.
lines between intentional genius and just realizing something that's okay. The lines between coming up with a good idea and realizing a good idea just fell into your lap. Those lines are very blurred.
And by the way, you can't ignore that during the whole editing process, like, there's tons of tiny adjustments being made. Like, you have the opportunity to remove or add something at any time. So by the
Yeah.
mere virtue that something is there, especially when you're doing something like editing,
means we decided not to remove it.
yeah, that is intent right
I
there.
mean, you could have missed something.
Yeah, no, it's
You
possible.
could make
It's possible.
mistakes or miss something in the
or
editing process.
include something that
But
other
yeah,
people see that you
I
didn't.
mean,
So share.
Like, I'm sure we've all heard the Bob Ross quote, like, there are no mistakes, just happy accidents, where, he'd fuck up a
Which
painting.
I absolutely
and then
do not agree with when it comes to editing, but okay.
Well, he would fuck up a painting and then he'd just turn it into a different painting.
Right,
you know?
right.
I mean, obviously, if you've already written a script and you're trying to make a video that is an exact interpretation of that script and you somehow fuck it up,
Yeah.
then you're gonna probably just have to redo it, But
Right.
like, you can a lot of the times transform something into something else by way of the serendipitous nature of it, where you just kind of you spilled like Jesse Wood with his fucking Man-Child Marsh. It was just like his floor exploded, so he made a video out of it. Like it's not that he creatively intended, hey, I'm gonna fill my room with water and then fucking take all my toys and throw them in it. It was like the ground is capsized and shit water has come out. I
Yeah.
happen to have a bunch of pirate themed toys. Let's film a pirate adventure.
But of course, there's also plenty of skill involved in his comedic timing and
Right.
being able to come up. He was able to know exactly, probably able to know how funny things are going to look on the camera how things are going to look. You know, when it's all edited, he's able to prepare for that. The best Endless Jest example is his fuck updates video, which was just him turning on the camera, pointing it at his computer, and then letting out an emotional reaction he was having at that exact moment. And anyone could have done something like that if they had a camera on hand. But what people don't realize is any regular person, it wouldn't have been nearly as funny because he's trained himself to be able to do that kind of thing really well. And as a result of people not realizing the level of skill involved in that, the bajillions of people have posted it on Facebook and removed his channel name at the end because they just don't think it's art, because they just think it was an accident.
One of the biggest things that like one of the biggest reasons I watch all of Jesse's content, even when it's like Beer Quest where he's just like reviewing beer, is that he's so amazing at some random shit happening and he turns it into part of the joke. Like in the latest Beer Quest episodes, there's parts where he'll just like start spinning a beer and then he just drops it and it breaks, and then he doesn't ever just like, oh, I fucked up, I need to, redo the video. It's always like, immediately, oh my god, now I've ruined Christmas, like he turns it into like a hilarious joke immediately, and the video just becomes a different work of art than what it was originally going to be, but, he recognized it and transforms it into the new thing. So, yeah, he's fucking great at that. And like, for me, that doesn't happen as much, like, on camera and stuff, because I'm not nearly as good at that kind of shit, but I do that a lot in the editing bay. Like, almost all my editing is, like, I threw a clip in, found a moment that kind of matched, and then based it around that, and, like, it just happens to work out. And,
So, I guess, like, authorial intent, it could be, like, you notice when stuff is good, when it just seems to happen, or you plan it, but nothing really matters until you make it public, until you present it. Everything is just the process.
I was going to bring it back to Evangelion, which is once again a show that used its, like, it totally did art from adversity in a brilliant way, because like the first half of the show is very clearly like everything they planned it to be, right? The first half is like gorgeously animated, every shot is very well considered, all the facial expressions, all the shot compositions, all of it's like very clearly trying to communicate certain emotions. And then the second half of the show is like they completely ran out of money, the budget went off schedule, they had to change the script because of like sarin gas attacks and shit. All this bad stuff happened, and so they went, alright, we can no longer do what we were doing before, what can we do now? And so they created something that, while like you may or may not find it to be on the same level of quality as what they were doing before, but they very clearly created an artistic work with what they had. Like, they made something that was so different and out there that it's actually one of the most memorable things about the show.
Yeah, and
is
you
like
know what? It does a bunch
parts.
of different things in its production that probably would be not approved of by the professional industry. It's a good thing Neon Genesis Evangelion was not posted on our Ava, or else that moderator would have said, why is he holding...
God,
why is Shinji with the robot
God,
holding
it's the
that
best
guy,
thing of all
and
time.
why is it a still frame for 8 whole seconds? There's no animation. That would be rejected. That doesn't make any sense. Why is Shinji just...
Taboo has no chill! Taboo has no chill!
Why is Shinji just a pencil sketch flying across the screen? They didn't finish animating it. That wouldn't
damn,
be accepted
dude, it's
at any
absolutely
animation
savage.
contest.
Holy shit. Man, I was giving you shit, Davu, for like obsessing over this guy. But
damn.
that payoff, holy shit, was so worth it. So worth it.
Alright. I don't think I can add to that, and we're about an hour in, so...
That's a great place to cap it
any
off.
closing thoughts? Whew, Davu.
I think we've
that was
got a lot
beautiful.
done today, like we do every day.
But what are we going to do tonight, Ben?
I am going to give a shout out, because I said this in the intro before that we lost because of my fuck up, but I want to say thanks, Reverse Spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
You said you really like how I plug my Patreon, and you gave me Bastion. I really appreciate both of those.
I really love that
things.
your plugging yourself has become a staple. It's a good...
Yeah, I got rewarded not for the thing I'm plugging, but for plugging
This
it. That's what he's a fan. That's what he's a fan of.
The plug was not the one that they wanted, but it was the one that they needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
See you
Everyone say
around.
goodbye. Bye.
Say goodbye and go and read my fucking thing at saintcomics.com or I'll kill you.
Yeah, intentionally.
I'm supposed to be working right now. I'm supposed to be working right now. But I'm not working. I'm doing nothing. My dick I'm jerking. Myself I'm sucking. I am an asshole. I am a stupid. I've got a deadline. Don't wanna do it.
May I ask about the song Eleanor Rigby? What was the motivation or inspiration for that?
Too queer.